We live in an era where most movies we see on the giant screen are filled with, or heavily use, a ton of CGI, computer-generated images. I can list so many examples, but I think this primarily became a trend upwards since Phantom Menace. Now, a lot of people have thoughts about the Phantom Menace, but one of the big criticisms tossed around is people don't like the use of CGI in the film, and today it kinda looks dated and bad. It personally takes me out of the story sometimes. I do not hate the prequels as much as some people, but it does take me out of the movie sometimes, seeing the amount of CGI used, but it does go to show how awesome Ian McGregor is.
Hello there.
For acting as good as he did with literally nothing around him. When you look back at the original Star Wars trilogy, especially A New Hope, there's such a tactile practicality and sense of real-world tangibility to the sets and costumes, which is crazy considering the stress and limitations they had at the time. What is the point I'm trying to make? That people tend to gravitate towards things that pull you into the world, transporting you away for a couple of hours. That's what a movie's supposed to do, take you on a journey. I think there is no better example of being transported away than the recent Netflix series The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. I don't know how many of you have actually seen Jim Henson's famous cult classic, The Dark Crystal, but it is one of those movies he made in the 80s period where it was dark fantasy and he used a lot of his creative puppetry. But this movie is completely puppets. There is not a single human, unlike The Labyrinth, which is probably my favorite fantasy film of the 80s. Now, when I was a kid, my parents wouldn't allow me to watch The Dark Crystal because it would be too scary and too dark for me. And I, small child, believed them because the covers of the movie did look a bit spooky and intense. But what's funny is I actually grew up watching The Muppet Show, as well as Labyrinth and The Storyteller, all things Jim Henson. And if you have any idea what The Storyteller is, then you'll know it's dark fantasy. And I actually really like that kind of genre of puppets, dark fantasy. I don't know why. I'm weird.
With stories, foretold the future with stories. The best place by the fire was kept for the storyteller.
But anyway, now that I was a grown-up, I decided that I would try watching The Dark Crystal. So, The Dark Crystal was a pretty good children's film, I'd say, though a bit dark. I didn't absolutely love it like I do The Labyrinth, but Labyrinth has some nostalgia for me because I grew up watching it, and I didn't with The Dark Crystal. Had I seen The Dark Crystal as a kid, I think it would have been up there with Labyrinth for me. I thought the world of The Dark Crystal was really fascinating, and the character designs were great. But the story itself, the main characters, Jen and Kira, I found them a bit lacking, and the movie was a bit slow-paced and full of exposition. I found it just okay. Beautiful, interesting, though. The things that were remarkable to me were like the Skeksis, the Mystics, the dynamics between them, the Gelfling. There was a lot that was interesting to me, but as a movie, as a story, it didn't engage me as much as the artistry did. Then I saw Netflix had released a Dark Crystal series, and I was very intrigued. So I started the first episode, and I was completely and utterly transported away and fell in love.
I saw something. A vision.
You read too many stories.
No, this was real!
Age of Resistance has become one of my top favorite miniseries of all time. It's not a TV show. It is one long movie divided into 10 little chunks, and they somehow perfectly, magically, miraculously, completely blend and work with the original movie, The Dark Crystal, respecting it, admiring it, but also enhancing it, making something arguably better. The creators of this miniseries had a passion for the original film, and they were not only super fans of the original, but they had the talents, skills, tools, and understanding for how to create a new story, tell it in an engaging way, make it work seamlessly with the original film. Like, how? It's amazing! This series is actually a prequel to the film. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, prequels, there's not many good prequels. But this prequel actually makes the story far more interesting because we know what's going to happen in the future. It creates a bit of suspense and dread, knowing what is going to eventually happen to the Gelfling. And you're always wondering, how is this going to turn out? Even though we know how it's going to turn out. We know where the end is, but we still don't know how it gets there. And it builds this sense of mystery, and also you're scared for these characters because you know what's going to happen. You know the Gelfling are extinct, but you don't want these main characters to die, and you've fallen in love with them, and oh my gosh. Anyway, the main characters, like I said, and there are a lot of characters, they're unique, they have personalities, and we root for them, care about them. Their decisions make sense. And the Skeksis are absolutely terrifying as ever. And the series is as dark as the original is, and sometimes a little bit darker. I think one of the biggest things that really makes this whole series work as a part of the world of Thra, as a part of the Dark Crystal, and having a story that just blends with the original, is because they used puppets.
Actual puppets, actual props, and you can see how handmade it is, which makes it so very different from CG. And then, of course, when you see the show, you see that the puppets are brought to life by individual puppeteers. It's really a very different art form than animation, than CG.
They used real sets. They had real props, real costumes, real tangible, created, touchable things. Almost everything in front of the camera, except with a few exceptions where they had to do some green screen for certain like big shots or whatever. But you're seeing real stuff, real things. And I want to emphasize that because I think it's really important that these filmmakers knew that that was the way they had to tell this story, that it was how to show these characters, to show this world, to engage the audience. It had to be real. The CGI was not relied on, though it was used, but as a tool when needed. And that, I believe, is the way to use CGI in movies, and I wish more movies would utilize robotics, animatronics, puppetry, physical props, and actors. Not green screening a set, and not adding Yoda in post. Now, obviously, CGI in an animated film like Pixar is not what I'm talking about here. But even Netflix decided that making this series an animated version, it wouldn't have worked nearly as well. It would not have felt as part of that world and what Jim Henson created, which was with puppets, sets, and props. I am so shocked that they were able to pull this off and that Netflix had the intuition and self-control to say, yes, do puppets, go for it. And not to think to themselves, puppets, no one uses puppets. Let's animate it. It'll be cheaper and more accessible to a wider audience. No, Netflix was smart and they made the right decision. Using puppets was the only way to tell this story. To tell a story about the Dark Crystal, about Thra, about Gelfling. And they not only told a story with puppets, but they told a really good story too. Where I thought the original movie, The Dark Crystal, kind of lacked in storytelling, this series far and away carried me in an adventure in this world of Thra. I love this series, and the reason why I am talking about it is because I hope you'll give it a shot. Watch the pilot, see the awesome use of puppetry, and be engulfed in an epic story. There aren't many fantasy epics like Lord of the Rings, and this is one of them. I really hope that this series has huge success so we can get more movies or shows made with real things, like puppets. Maybe get a puppet renaissance harkening back to the days of Jim Henson. I grew up watching Muppet Show Storyteller Labyrinth, so Age of Resistance felt like it was made for me, and I loved every second of it. I hope you'll love it too, and with enough people watching it, then maybe we'll get a second season. Please, Netflix, please! I don't care about Stranger Things anymore, just give me my Gelfling. Well, thanks for watching this Z-Factor Talk thing. Let me know in the comments down below if you've seen the show, what you think about it, and adieu!